We are live. How are y'all doing this evening?
Good.
Good, yeah.
Good, good. Well, thank y'all for joining me tonight since we have Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday on Monday. So I'm glad we were able to meet tonight. And I'm super excited because each and every one of y'all have got some exciting things happening this month. And I can't wait for y'all to tell everyone what's happening. But first, I'd like to thank everyone who makes our Artist in Residence program possible, and that's to both of all of our cities. So we have City of College Station, City of Bryan, City of Navasota, and then we have some amazing businesses who help us out, like Krislyn with the City of Bryan, and Twin City Properties with City of College Station with those two residents, and then the Horlock House in Navasota. Super exciting and thankful for all those people who make this possible. So Krislyn, let's get started with you with what's happening over at the Bryan Artist in Residency.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. So usually we do like a who I am recap, right? So,
yes, please, because just in case somebody this might be their first time joining, please do. Yeah.
So I'm Krislyn. I'm originally from Houston. I graduated from A&M in August. And most of my work are large-scale charcoal pieces. But I have also worked in digital and other media, of course, too. So most of my work deals with sort of the great and overwhelming, and especially learning to embrace fear and the unknown. So we can go on to next slide here. So back in August, or actually right before I started this residency, I started a piece based on my experience back when I lived in Germany for a couple of semesters doing study abroad. And so when I was living in Bonn, which is just south of Cologne, and Cologne has a very famous big cathedral, one of many in Europe. And the first time I saw that cathedral, it's right there when you walk out of the train station. Like you've seen other cathedrals, but this one is like big.
Wow.
Like it hits you a little bit different than the other one. So I wanted to do something based on that, especially tying it in with my religious faith as a Christian. And so the thing is, of course, like doing such a famous landmark like that, almost anything is going to feel a bit like a touristy thing almost. So I wanted to find a different angle that expressed my experience personally. So what I wound up doing here is actually an aerial view, like a satellite image that I took off of Google of the cathedral and the surrounding area. And I kneeled on the paper to do this drawing, almost like I was facing the cathedral, sort of as a metaphor for the pilgrimage that I made there, the whole journey, encompassing that whole experience with not just the awe of the cathedral itself, but the experience of going there. So what we have here is sort of a few process images of working on this, because like I said, I started it back a couple of weeks before this residency started, and it wound up taking a lot longer than I expected. I wound up having to take about a 2-month break from it in October and November. So it's finally finished now, and y'all get to see the final product. So let's look through
wow. I love it. I love it because I remember you taking a break. You're like, I've got to take a break on the, but you know, when you look at how big your pieces of paper are, I mean, it's as tall as I am, you know, like I don't know how you did this because it's amazing and it's huge.
Well, you know, I'd done another piece like this that was more organic forms, and it was in the Rocky Mountains, it was set. And that one only took me about 2 weeks because it was these huge sweeping forms. But this one has these small geometric patterns from buildings that takes so much longer, and I didn't anticipate that. So you can see in these pictures where I actually projected the image onto the paper and traced it first with vine charcoal, which is very light and erases very easily. And then going back over it, getting the blackest blacks with compressed charcoal. So you can see that happening here. There's actually 3 layers visible here of the faint outline of vine charcoal, and the darker outline of the compressed charcoal, and then the filled in spaces. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So here is the whole thing once I've done the full black pieces, which, as you can see, worked out. They're mostly the outlines of the buildings and the shadows, especially. But you can see in this image, I've started on the actual shading on the cathedral there on the right side. Mm-hmm.
And that big open space is where you're kneeling down doing this.
Yes, on the left side here, there's a open space, almost like a thumbprint or something. That's actually where I've been kneeling. And you can see my footprints there in the space too, a little bit.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. So here's when I have different levels of hardness for the charcoal. So there's the really soft charcoal that makes the really dark marks. So I started by going through with that darker charcoal, and I did all the 50% dark and darker sections. So you can see in here, there's still a lot of white space, especially on the right side. You can see the image has actually been flipped here just because of the way I had it hanging up in my studio. But yeah, you can see the darker areas colored in on there. And then on the left edge here, I've actually gone in and done the lighter pieces too. So that's just a small strip that's actually finished.
Oh, wow.
And I think this is about where I stopped for my little 2-month break.
I think so.
So if you go to the next image, I think that's the final product.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Here you go.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wow,
There's
that
a lot
almost
of
looks like a
detail there.
picture. That is incredible. What do y'all think, girls? Isn't that just wow?
It's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I had like about a 3-foot long printout of this that I was looking at while I was working and everything. But there's still a lot that you just can't see from the satellite image. It's not that detailed. So a lot of that's made up, honestly.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, you can still, if you know the area, you can still find all the major landmarks and everything and recognize, certain stores and buildings and stuff that I've been to. So it's a very personal piece to me in that sense. But I know, especially the Rocky Mountain piece, the companion piece to this one, people saw all sorts of different forms in that when they didn't know that it was mountains. I had a lot of interesting discussions of that as being like bed sheets or caverns, all sorts of natural forms. And so I'm curious to see how people will react to this one, especially if they're not familiar with the location themselves.
Wow.
So this next image I actually just included for scale, so you guys can see how big this is actually, compared to me. So yeah.
It's huge. And you look very proud. I like this picture of you, by the way.
Yeah, I was very proud.
You should be.
I spent
That's
6 months
like
on this.
fantastic. It's an amazing job there. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Thank you. So, and then, so I think that's about it for this piece. I'm working on, or I'm planning out my next few pieces, hopefully, and hopefully those will get to be in a show at the Art of War that we're working on planning right now.
Awesome.
So we don't have dates yet or anything, but we're talking. So
Awesome.
hopefully I'll get to to produce some more work just for that and show those off to the public soon.
I love it. But speaking of shows, you do have one coming up at the POV in Lake Walk,
Yes.
which is super exciting, which I love that little coffee shop. It's, oh my gosh, they've got really good coffee too, by the way, and little
They
treats
do.
and stuff. Oh my gosh. And it's a happening little coffee shop there at Lake Walk. So,
Yeah, it's a nice spot, especially with the view of the lake and everything there. It really is.
oh my. So you're going to be there starting January 21st through the 20th.
Yes.
Wow.
And on the following Thursday, we're planning to have a reception there at the hotel for it.
Oh, awesome. That's exciting. I love Stella. It's so awesome there.
Mhm.
Great people.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to them for letting me have this show there, especially they usually only have the rotating artists in the cafe, but because so much of my work is so big and doesn't really fit in the cafe, they've also offered me a couple of walls in the lobby space as well for the
Oh
big
my
pieces.
gosh. I'm gonna have to tell them thank you. I'm so glad that
Yes.
you guys were able to figure something out, because I was like, oh my gosh, your pieces are so big. I don't know how we're gonna put them in that little cafe, but yeah, I'm super excited. So your show is happening January 21st through February 20th, and I'll make sure that we do some shout outs on Facebook and stuff. I think that interns have y'all have it up, but I'll double check to make sure. That's just super exciting. Great people. Well, thank you, Krislyn, for sharing what you're doing, and I appreciate that. You've done some amazing work during your residency, so I can't wait to see what else you come up with.
Thank you.
So next, we're going to be moving over to the city of Navasota in the Horlock house. And Miss Ashley, you've been doing some incredible work. For those who may not know who you are, this is their first time joining. Give us a little bit of background about who you are and what all is happening in the residency for you.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Ashley Andersen. I'm actually a Colorado-based artist, and I have been primarily working with sculpture, or at least sculptural paintings and two-dimensional works when I am doing wall-based work throughout this residency, which has been really kind of an interesting shift in my work from being more installation-based. It's been exciting to see, actually, but content wise, my work really kind of explores the intersection of our somatic or our felt experiences in our bodies and spiritual experiences. So really just trying to visually see what I can make when I'm trying to explore like unseen but felt realities. So most of the works that you're going to see this week, they really revolve around the notion of pain. And pain and grief and mourning have kind of become central to a lot of my works within the past month or two. And that's either within my own personal history with pain, or also kind of being able to work in conversations with neighbors that are outside of our studios and talking to them about stories in their lives. A lot of them deal with very physical pain on a daily basis. Others have experienced loss and death of family members. So some of the works have turned into collaborative pieces in working with neighbors. So it's been fun to see that kind of transpire. But the first piece, which you can go to the next one, I believe is, so it's this, it's called On Being Ill. And so it's a collaboration with an author, with Virginia Woolf, and her essay by the same name, On Being Ill. And as I was able to get this, it's a little antique child's chair from one of the emporiums down here. Actually, this one isn't from the emporium. This is from an old hole in the wall shop that I discovered, that two older men own it, and they got to tell me a bunch of stories, but it's from the 19th century. So I was able to kind of bring it into the gallery and see what type of conversation it started. But it felt lonely, it's dismembered. You have a very structural element that is missing, but it's retied to a different part of the chair. So whenever people start talking about either architecture or furniture, people use the term bones a lot. The bones of the house or the bones of the chair are sturdy. And so the chair and a lot of the furniture that I use is often a stand-in for conversation about the body and pain in general. So I placed on this is so you can see kind of how it looks further back, but it looks very minuscule in the room. But the next image, I believe, shows what's placed on the seat of the chair. And so you can see better how the previous, or not, how the previous image showed that missing part of the chair, where that's been attached to. So just a bit more detail. But on it, I placed a plaque. So I use beeswax a lot for the memory of the material and how that represents the memory of a landscape. But it also, just the visual aspects of it, it looks like skin. And you can press into it and it can be pierced and punctured. So it gives a very violent and really, but also like delicate quality to it that brings up bodily images in a very beautiful and contemplative manner. And I like that a lot. So I made this plaque of beeswax. And then on top of it, I placed a transparent sheet of paper, which I wrote an excerpt from Virginia Woolf. And on the next image, I believe you can see the text that I chose. So I've gone through the book several times, and I've got a different piece where I use multiples of these. There's about 13 plaques in all that have that change. It's also been, I've also made it into a book. But this specific excerpt I took, and it's so it really for people that are watching that, especially within this past year, but if you've dealt with pain a lot, it changes your thought process in that you're living very much in your body. So your senses become heightened, and there's not really any way to describe pain, especially being ill. And that's true within like the history of literature, which I won't get into. But this specific excerpt is a very, it's a very descriptive way of talking about how we experience pain and the notion of just being ill. And I can read it, so in case you guys can't see it. But this excerpt says, all day, all night, the body intervenes, blunts or sharpens, colors or discolors, turns to wax in the warmth of June and hardens to tallow in the murk of February. And so you have these very expressive phrases that Virginia Woolf is using. And for those who might be familiar with Virginia Woolf, she was a woman and writer who lived in a ton of pain. And she ended up, walking into the river to end her life at the end of her life. But that whole essay really is just a really beautiful expose on pain. So I think on the next image is just a detail shot, so you can see. So I took a mending needle, which I really like the imagery of that, since that is something we use to fix our mistakes or the holes in our garments, and kind of put things back together. And I used it to puncture through both the paper and into the beeswax, and to attach both of those things. So you have a lot of violence in the action of it, but it secures it practically. And I like the material in and of itself, that we're using something that mends us and attaches us to our pain, and just kind of opening up that dialogue that exists between our own pain and sometimes the wisdom that pain can bring into our life. But so yeah, so it's a really interesting piece, but it's the fact that it's on a little child's chair, it brings a solemnity to it, especially when it's placed in a larger space like the Horlock galleries.
Yeah, I like all the symmetry that you used, and like, I mean, that and how you just described how a mending needle, I mean, that is perfect on that. Don't you think, ladies? I mean, I think she really got this piece.
Thanks. Yeah, it was definitely a piece that started to come together.
Mm-hmm.
But so the next piece is, again, it is a jumping off point again, or at least it's still in that realm of pain. And I was thinking about the action of moaning and how our body will make these noises without us thinking about it. So whenever we're hurt, or if we're ill, if we're sick, and in pain, our body will start to moan, and it occurs within a rhythm. And the body this as a subconscious way of soothing ourselves. And but it's very, so I was immediately started trying to figure out how to visually represent the rhythm of moaning. So you start to have a pattern, but you also have a lot of variety within that action. So you have either soft groans or louder groans, and having, again, worked with people and lived with people in extreme pain and being the person who takes care of them, helping them through that. So it's a very lived experience. And you're not really thinking about anything else other than trying to get out of that specific moment. So I started using and making, so I use found materials. Again, you can see that there are two, like on either side of this beam, which is a 19th century beam that I was able to acquire. It's locally sourced. And so I like using that history of a place in the work itself. And so I used these legs of a chair and broke them apart and then started to dip them in beeswax. There's a phrase from one of my songs that talks about wrapping our injured flesh around our hope. And so I liked the action of putting this beeswax, which I very much use as a stand-in for flesh, and wrapping it around something that's so central to all of our lives, either our home life, how furniture acts as a stabilizing force in our lives, just in everyday use. And then I've got things that try to make them feel, that try to express the fragility of our bodies. So I have broken eggs in there, as well as 19th century nails that I hammered into a block of beeswax and wood. So in the next page, you can see a little bit more of the details in each of them. So I think if you go to the next one, it shows the cube, if I'm not mistaken, or at least a detail. So here you can see I use the wax because it is impressionable, but it will break and pull apart from the violence of the nail being driven into it. So I have something that feels a lot more violent, and the rest of the pieces feel more like little moments of mourning about the fragility. So you have eggshells that are dipped in beeswax or that are gold leafed. So this one is more so you can see that each is put into a pattern, and the pattern is the visual representation of a repetition, rhythmic patterns in the moaning. So it's just compatible to something that's audible. If you go to the next one, you can see more what I'm talking about with the nails and the wax. And you go to the next. So you can start to see all the rust of actual centuries, which I really enjoyed. I love using things that are older and bringing them into the work, because now you're talking about just a larger conversation of time and people that have engaged with this experience. And I think the rest are going to be details of each of those little pieces. So you can see the gold leaf inside one of the shells, which is actually one of the prettiest things on there. And I really like the little sacred space that it holds, but it glows on that beam. And then next one is same or similar in the sense, but it's actually dipped in beeswax. So again, bringing those images of a fractured and broken body. And the next one I think is just so you can see it in comparison to that chair leg where that beeswax has been molded around it. And I think the next one is just so you can see, so you can see on a different perspective the pattern that's laid out.
Wow. So what is the one between, I think it might be the eggs that are gold leaf and the chair, the leg of a chair?
Oh
What
yeah, so it's another piece of wood that's been charred, that's locally acquired. So it is another piece of wood from the 1800s, but there's a nail that's been driven up all the way through it. So it just feels very much like a piece of memory. And then the trauma of that nail being driven through it. And then you don't really know what it's been attached to. So there's a lot of different conversations you can start to explore with it, but yeah.
Wow, very interesting piece.
Thanks.
Yeah.
May I ask why the nails are into half of the block of the beeswax instead of the entire thing?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So So I was actually, I'm glad you asked it because I was torn. They were originally, I was always going between the two. I liked the fact that there was something whole to that piece, so that it wasn't a piece that was explicitly like the entire thing was about, or it wasn't a violent piece, the entirety of it. So you have a part of your life, or at least it's actually over half of it, is still calm, it's still beautiful, it's all smooth for the most part. And so you have this area of your life that people perceive and they see you, and you have this part of your life that is very violent and traumatic and affects you. And those cracks do start to morph in to the other part of it, but they don't overtake it. So it started to open up a conversation of how we are perceived, as well as the really felt pain that we live. So those two realities of our lives.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I really love that detail of the nails going into the beeswax where you can see the cracks. And I think the smooth part of that really brings in the contrast. So I'm glad that you did that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, so this one was kind of exploring that aspect of it. And it's a object, it's a piece that sits on the floor. So as I've talked to Krislyn and both Shannon, I'm interested in what an object in space says. So when some things are sitting on the floor or they're placed in different places than your typical place on a wall, you start to question your relationship with it. So are you in the spaces or the object space, or is the object in your space? So you start thinking about relationships and how you engage with things in just ordinary life. But yeah. So I think the next one is a wall-based sculpture. Yeah, so this is taken from, this was basically from a log in our yard that started to decay. And I've got several of them, and I couldn't, and I knew I wanted to cut them apart, and I started to hollow them out, and I really didn't know where I was going with it. But I thought that the state of decay was interesting and starting to reclaim it. And I've always been interested in things existing inside of realities, spiritual constants and temporal realities, and what we see and what we don't. But that was it. And I had no idea. So I also didn't have a chainsaw. Like I have a lot of other saws, and I couldn't get it where I needed. So I contacted one of the neighbors outside of our studio, and I texted him, and he came over that evening with his chainsaw. And so he helped me cut the stuff apart. And it was within that encounter is where we started to was where I learned of the death of his dad that happened recently. And so that started opening up these conversations of grief and mourning. And that paired with this, which is very process oriented. So I turned it upside down and I started to carve out the solid wood from the inside, which was very time consuming and honestly physically painful. And so it gives you enough time to start thinking about things that you wouldn't normally think about. And his dad and grief and pain and mourning was really the central thought behind it. And so if you go to the next image, you can see so as I started to do it, the wood started to split, and I started to excavate that was compacted dirt from these channels basically that were in there. And there were a lot of grubs, which were gross to find, and termites. So I had to deal with those. So I had excavated a lot of bugs and a lot of big white grubs. And in the process, baking it is always interesting. So it became quite a long-term thing that I wasn't originally planning. And then the next image, you can see what I did with the inside. So after I hollowed everything out, I gold leafed the entire interior. And I love how refractive it is. And the gold, which it still does it, just not as much as I had thought it was. So when it's turned against the wall, since it hangs there, and it protrudes quite a bit, about a foot, over a foot from the wall, all the light will seep through those cracks, and refract with the gold. And so little pools of gold will come out along the edges. In my head, I was expecting a lot more, but there's still enough of a glow to where you understand that there's something spiritual inside of it. And so it was interesting dealing with with a dead piece of wood and things that were continually making it die, and talking and to neighbors about pain and listening to stories and my own contemplations and meditations on what that means, and dealing with this piece of wood and then gold leafing it. So yeah, it became a really interesting piece. And then walking in graveyard, sometimes I like to do that. And I was realizing that the word hallowed doesn't occur in our vernacular or everyday vernacular very often, and hallowed meaning something sacred, and how close it is to something being hollowed out. So the title of the piece became Hallowed with an A, Hallowed Out. And so it just kind of starts to put your mind more into that realm of something being sacred, but maybe not understanding why this domed piece of wood that's been carved is sacred, until you start to look at it and observe basically the wounds inside of the wood, and peering into it and seeing that beauty inside. So it was a really interesting piece, and I had no clue where it was going, but it took so long that it really started to develop alongside a lot of these other pieces. So it started to inform the work as I started figuring out how much of the pieces and sculptures I was making was talking about pain in a lot of ways. So yeah, those are some of the more recent ones that I've been working on.
Oh, and you have one more in this. I like
Oh,
this
yeah.
side view of it, because it kind of gives you a little bit of idea of what it would look like on the wall. I think a little bit. I don't know if it will give the exact of how the gold would show on the wall, but it's very pretty.
Yeah. So it was a nice, there's a lot of duality to it, and I enjoy that aspect.
I would have never thought. Yeah, I liked how that turned out.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to see how it really was a process in every sense of the word.
Yes. But I love how it started out with someone helping you cut that, and with the story. I think that's very memorable.
Yeah, it's really impacted a lot of stuff. But this one, as well as all the others and more pieces, those are all going to be on display and a part of our exhibition, What Remains, which is, we're in the process of installing it. So we're going to be having our artist talk, actually talking about the whole exhibition next Friday on the 22nd. And that exhibition is going to be running through February 13th, I believe, or that weekend. So perhaps the 15th.
Super exciting for you girls, as this is wrapping up for you guys. And y'all got some amazing pieces. People really need to come and check it out. And please join us on the 22nd to hear more about their pieces and what's going on. And gosh, and when you stop by the Horlock House, you actually get to talk to these ladies, which is super exciting, to actually talk to the artist that has items in the Horlock House. So yeah. Super excited for you girls.
Thank you.
Shannon, you were up next. Gosh, so give us a little bit of background about who you are, just in case nobody this is their first time joining us with the Artist in Residence, so they have a little idea of what's going on with you.
Yeah, I'm Shannon Ferguson. I am one of the Artists in Residence at the Horlock House, and I am mostly a printmaker, but it's definitely become more interdisciplinary over the past 6 months since we've been here. I've been experimenting a lot with textiles and fiber arts, and the ideas that I was working with before I came here are becoming even more relevant now with the materials that I'm working with. So in the last talk that we did, I was starting to experiment with what I could do artistically with the Cricut machine. So like that craft machine that you can make stickers on. It has like little cutting blades that work off of vectors and digital formats. And so I've been working with that to use on my more current work. And in the prints that I did earlier and prints before coming here, I use a lot of found imagery, Victorian images, and just images that I can create digitally or recreate into prints and collage together to create different compositions and kind of illustrate what I'm wanting to say. And so what I'm finding through working with the Cricut is that I can turn these found images into digital formats that I can cut out into physical, like almost stencils or like floating lines almost. I've been using it to cut felt. So the next image is a double entendre on accident. It's felt hands. So it's felt as in it's actually felt. And a lot of my work is about touch. And so feeling felt. It was very much accidental, but I think holds true to kind of how I think. And that tactility of felt is something that I've been working with a lot. It's very familiar. I feel like felt is something that I used to work with a lot when I was a kid. And it was always something that I was like warmed by the texture of it. It was something that I loved to touch and play with. And now I'm really loving kind of experimenting with what I can do with it. So these are, it's 2 layers of cutout hands with my Cricut machine. So these are digital images that have been vectorized and cut out using the Cricut. And so it's I think 8 different cut sets. So it took quite a while to cut out all of these hands.
Did you have to reprint some of them? You know, kind of like when you did the Horlock house, that some of them didn't really go right. Did you have that with these?
Thankfully, no, because I figured out what I was doing wrong. But I also got some sharper blades, which helped.
Well, I think it's just so cool that you create this, you know, and then you put it digitally and then you do this. Like, that's just super cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a really fun process that's pushing my art further and into like new skills that I wasn't really thinking about as much before coming here. And so I have a print that I made, I think now almost 3 years ago, that's very similar to this composition when I first started thinking about touch. And it's a layered screen print that I personally didn't find very successful. And so now being able to recreate it in this much more structured format and on definitely a larger scale. This is about 30 by 34 inches, maybe 35 with the fringe. And so it's on a larger scale than prints I could do, well, other than my big wood blocks, but yeah, it's been a really fun experience kind of experimenting where I can push myself through this content. So the next one is similar. I actually did this one before the hands one, but similar in the use of found imagery, pushing to how detailed of an image I can cut out using the Cricut. And I found this beautiful flesh toned felt that's very peachy, and I really was drawn to it. And so this is the same image that I used in my big wood block that I created earlier when I was here. That just really, the eyes are very appealing to, or they draw you in. And this composition of the banner shape, I really lends itself to it. And the fringe, kind of working with that Victorian imagery and being in the Victorian house and kind of learning the history of that time period, that kind of exquisite decoration and adornment is something that's really appealing to me.
It really looks like a mask, like it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, kind of reminds me of India, what some of the ladies would wear, you know, across their face and with those eyes, because they have really pretty eyes, and that's what you focus on when they wear. Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where this image originally was. It was probably for like a glasses ad, to be honest, in like the 1800s. Um, a lot of dresses from the 1800s, as well as like curtains and decorative ornaments in houses, have this like beautiful lace and beautiful fringe that adorn it. And I've been kind of traveling back and forth between Hobby Lobby and the house, buying various types of fringes
Oh
and
wow.
playing with those, because I really love how it looks, kind of compared to such a soft material like felt.
Yeah, very beautiful. Yeah.
And so
Oh,
then
we had a
next
comment.
one,
Miss Barbara said it was beautiful. I agree with
oh,
you, Barbara. It's very
that's,
beautiful piece.
that's my mom.
Oh, come on. Thanks for joining us, Mom.
Thanks. And so this is a series that I've started, and this is part of a triptych, but I decided to not show the full triptych since we are having our show starting next week, and we're doing an artist talk. So you should come check it out if you want to see the full triptych. But I am starting this series where these are homes in Navasota that these are historical homes. So I've done a couple of the different houses in Navasota, and turned them into files and printed them to where they're their own banner. And I really love the architecture and how graphic the cricket is, or makes the houses look once they're cut out. My first experience with doing that was the Horlock house banner. And so I learned my lesson and figured out how to cut these out better. So less tries with these, which makes them much more enjoyable to make.
Wow.
But if you're in the Navasota area and you're listening to this, if you want a banner with your house on it, send me a picture, because I'm still making more.
Oh,
I'm going to try to make a bunch before I leave here.
that is super cool. Very exciting. I can't wait to see all of them. That's awesome. And what a Navasota is super cool. And they have some pretty cool buildings and all kinds of things in Navasota. It's just a great town. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Since I do, like, before coming here, I was using the Victorian imagery, I was really drawn to the architecture around here. And so I've been on the lookout for houses that are visually have that same style, and it's been fun to draw them and create these images.
Wow. Super cool. Let's see. And then this next slide is talking about what is happening. So you want to give us some details on y'all's show?
Yeah. So our show is running. We're installing it currently, and it runs through February 13th at the Horlock House. And next Friday, January 22nd, we will be having a Facebook Live showing all of our work in it and talking about all of our inspirations. And yeah, it'll be really exciting. And if you want to come check it out, our gallery is open.
Yes. And we have a lot of events on our Facebook page, so you can see when they're opening and what's happening. So super excited for you ladies as you're wrapping up your residency program, and absolutely love seeing how y'all's work has grown and what y'all been doing different than you normally would have done since you've had this time to focus on your art.
Yeah.
I love it. Super cool. Then next we have, sorry, my computer, here we go. All right, next is our College Station Artists in Residence. This is a 3-month Artists in Residency program, and it doesn't start until June. And so you'll get to hear from this person, whoever it may be. Applications are open if you just go to our website at acbb.org to apply, but it doesn't start until June. So super excited about that program. And then we also set the date for our Empty Bulls Junior. It's happening Saturday, March 6th, and this is where kids are helping kids. So you'll have to check it out on our website. More details coming soon. It's definitely going to be an all outside event. And then happening in here at the Gallery at the Arts Council is we have from the Art from the Street, which is super cool art that we have in our lobby by some amazing artists who actually live on the street, and they use this art to do all kinds of beautiful things, not only within themselves, but to show how creative and talented they truly are. And then on our main gallery, we have Kathina, who has some gorgeous work. You must come check her work out. Oh my gosh, super. She has all kinds of things from, gosh, landscapes and very beautiful pieces. You'll have to come check it out. Then next we have save the date for Boots and Barbecue, which is March 27th. And ladies, y'all did a fantastic job again this month with telling us about what you guys are doing. And we're going to go through this one more time so everyone knows when your dates of your show are. So Ashley, I'm going to ask you to give us a recap on what's happening at the Horlock House.
Yeah, so come on down. Right now we're installing our final show, which is called What Remains. And that's going to be running through February 13th, the weekend of the 13th. And we are going to be having our artist talk, which is going to be a comprehensive look at our exhibition. So that's going to be similar to this format with all of our works and us talking about the influences and everything that happened over the course of our residency. And that will be next Friday on January 22nd. At the same time, I believe, right? 6 o'clock?
Yeah, we'll do 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You got it. And then Krislyn, tell us what's happening with Bryan.
Yes. So at the Stella Hotel and POV Cafe, they're on Lake Atlas. I'm going to be having my show, Reverence, that has about a dozen small pieces throughout the cafe, and then 4 of my big pieces in the hotel lobby there by the little cocktail bar as well. So that's going to be from January 21st through February 20th with a reception on the 28th.
Wow, super exciting. So Shannon, we're going to go back to you and we're going to talk about the Horlock. So tell us when your show is happening.
We're installing now, and it's through February 13th, and we are having our digital opening on next Friday, January 22nd at 6 o'clock.
Awesome. So thank you, ladies, so much for telling us and recapping what we're doing. And as always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact us here at the Arts Council. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Well, ladies, thank you so much. And I hope y'all have a great evening. And thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.